Good morning, Ambassador
Good
Carla
morning.
Sands. Can you
Morning,
introduce yourself to our audience first?
Sure. So I'm happy to talk to you. And I was President Trump's ambassador to Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. And after I got back from serving in Denmark, well, before I went, I was running a commercial real estate company in Los Angeles, but we had a footprint nationwide. And we owned enclosed regional malls, grocery anchored centers, and Class A office. And then I went to Denmark, served as ambassador, and then came back to the U.S. and moved back. I'm an 8th generation Pennsylvanian, so I ran for the U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania. And when that was unsuccessful, I joined America First Policy Institute as their vice chair for energy and environment. And I'm also their Pennsylvania State chapter chair and then a senior advisor to America First Works. That's the C4 arm that helped President Trump have the ground troops to get elected in 2024.
The one that John Fetterman eventually won, that seat?
That seat, and I would have beat John Fetterman.
I think you could have, because I saw his debate performance. That's one for the records.
Yes, women can say things that men cannot say.
That's true, you're right.
We do have some license.
You're right. Since you were the ambassador of Denmark, and it's one of the highlights of Trump's second admin, I think he also touched upon it in his first term that he wants to take over. Does he want to take over Denmark? I mean, I know Greenland.
Yes.
Can you kind of elaborate on that? Because most people don't understand what's going on with that, the situation in Greenland.
Well, so the Greenlanders are unhappy because Denmark, the king of Denmark owned Greenland at one time, and they were exploited and very badly treated. The Danes wouldn't even let Greenlanders in the mid-20th century have kerosene lanterns or rifles. And it wasn't until our U.S. military occupied Greenland during World War II that they were allowed to have. We gave them kerosene lanterns or rifles, but the Danes had kept them living in largely pre-industrial ways. And so the U.S. occupied, we built the ports, we built the airports, we built many of the buildings that are in Greenland even today. And then we left when the Berlin Wall fell, and we had that peace dividend, and every nation in the West anyway began to spend less on their defense. And so we left it, and Denmark took back over Greenland, and they've profited from this relationship, the Danes. The Greenlanders get about $600 million of welfare payments from Denmark every year, but it's not enough to build up the Greenland. There's no infrastructure. There's not even a road between two towns there. There is no infrastructure. There's some airports and some ports. You can't use the ports unless the water is flowing, not frozen. So the Danes plan to go independent, and I thought this was decades away. But their premier said it a little over a month ago from the podium, we are going independent. So the U.S. and Denmark needs to look at this with clear eyes. Greenland intends to go independent. It's the world's largest island with 57,000 people. That's not a lot of people. Not enough to govern this large body of land, and certainly not able to defend it. But Denmark's not able to defend it or develop it. They don't have enough money. Their economy is about the size of the U.S. state of Colorado. So it's not a big economy. And the U.S., under President Trump, is not going to let Greenland fall into the hands of Russia or China. China already tried to pull them into their Belt and Road Initiative back in 2017 when they flew the premier and his government and CEOs to Beijing, rolled out the red carpet. What can we do? We want to finance, we want to build. And
they went to study that area, I know, right? China.
No, they want to control it. Right. There's a great book written by a woman named Anne-Marie Brady called China as a Polar Great Power. The CCP looks at the globe from the poles, the North and South Pole, and the U.S. and our allies have been lacking in capabilities and in oversight of the North and the South, so the Arctic and the Antarctic. We need to pay more attention to stop the CCP from their intention of controlling these areas. The CCP wrote a white paper in 2018 called China as the Polar Silk Road, and that is their intention. The Polar Silk Road. They intend to have control in governance, in the assets that are in there, whether it's energy, rare minerals, and Greenland is full of rare earths, but it's also full of oil and gas. But Greenland has unfortunately signed on to the radical UN agenda of no fossil fuels, net zero.
Stuff,
yes,
right?
Exactly. Now they do want to keep their environment clean, and that's important to them. And of course, the U.S. supports that. We want the Greenland to be, the water to be clean and pure, and the earth to be good. Goes without saying. And the U.S. has the highest regulatory sort of controls on things like mining and harvesting of energy. But Greenland has been led down this path by these great big groups. Because
the globalists, right?
The globalists. They're a tiny group trying to run this big island, and they just don't have the capacity on their own. And so President Trump, when he says, we want to own Greenland, he'll get a deal done. I don't know what it will look like, but I hope that Denmark and Greenland and the U.S. will sit down soon and come to an agreement that's okay for everybody. Because if Greenland's going independent, we're not going to let them be out there vulnerable, hanging on their own. They can't defend themselves. They can't develop themselves. Someone has to.
You said $600 per month from the Danes government?
$600 million per year.
Per year, $600 million per year. Okay. Was it I guess, some have been speculating while you were ambassador of Denmark that you might have given Trump this idea of taking over Greenland. Did you kind of talk about it? Because he laid the groundworks back in the first term, right?
Right.
He talked about it.
He did. He threw out in 2019, I want to buy Greenland. And Denmark went, the prime minister of Denmark said, very insulting things about his statement. They can't afford it. It's up there as like an asset they can't afford to own. This is about Denmark. And there's not just Greenland as the island, but it's the whole area. It's called the GI-UK gap, Greenland, Iceland, UK.
GI-UK gap.
Yes, because Denmark also has the Faroe Islands as part of the kingdom, and the Faroe Islands are just north of Scotland. So all those open seas, Russian subs, Russian ships, Chinese are working with the Russians. The Russians have 40 icebreakers. Some of them have missiles on them. The U.S. has 2 icebreakers, just as an example.
What are the rare minerals there in Greenland that we have to pay attention to?
So they have
nickel,
They have about 3/4 or more of all the rare earths that we need to make things like cell phones and defense equipment, electric car batteries. Yes. So, but there are other places we can get them with a lot less difficulty and expense.
So New York Times came out with an article pretty recent, about Greenlanders, what they think about Trump's rhetoric about taking over Greenland. But it sounded like a lot of them they want independence from Denmark, they think, right? The majority of the Greenlanders, they want independence from Denmark.
They do.
But also New York Times is a very far left paper.
Oh, yes.
So they always try to portray Trump in a very negative light. But I could see some light there where they want America being involved somehow with their business. Did you get that kind of sentiment when you were there?
Well, so there's also a Wall Street Journal article about a week and a half ago about how Russia's controlling the Arctic and China's partnering with them on this. But what I saw in Denmark and Greenland is that the people, they really felt so oppressed by the Danes over the, centuries, that they're and how the Danes have profited off of them and not built them up as a country.
Since 1700s, like around that area?
Yes,
right?
Yes, but even in the most recent times, Denmark gets rich and Greenlanders don't. Like a few Greenlanders get rich. There's the elite even in Greenland. But most people live in, they may not have running water and they're living in the Arctic, just as an example. They're related to the American Alaskan Native people. And I saw that people, they want prosperity. They want to have, strong tourism, and they want to have good paying jobs. They want to have their mining be successful. But Denmark's never invested in this. There was one mayor who wanted to build a road between 2 towns because there is no road between 2 towns. And this mayor couldn't get Greenland or Denmark to just finance his road. And this is a road for just 3-wheelers. it's just gravel, and no one would finance it. And that's just an example of how there's a lack of investment and lack of interest from Denmark. Until now, they were not interested. Now, when President Trump said what he
everybody's
did,
interested
they're
right?
saying we're going to spend a lot of money on Greenland.
How often have you been there?
I've been there 5 times.
It must be freaking cold there.
It is cold, but you know, you
but
prepare
it's so beautiful.
for it.
I would love to go there.
It's beautiful, and the Faroe Islands are beautiful too. We have a base above the Arctic Circle it used to be called Thule Air Base, now it's called Kcpac Space Base. But when I went to the ice sheet on the middle of the glacier, in the ice sheet, to visit this National Science Foundation investigation place where they drill into the cores of the glacier to get samples and learn information. And I wore my sorels because we got kitted up in this Arctic kind of, you wear heavier parka, heavier everything. But I looked at their shoes and I thought, no, I'll wear my own shoes, my own sorels. Mine were aspen sorels, not Arctic sorels. And the cold just went right up in my bones from the ice. It was so tremendously cold.
So I'm wondering, I saw some articles on X and some conservative outlets that majority of them wants America to take over. Is that the other extreme side of the story? Is there some truth to that, or they definitely do not want America to take over Greenland?
Well, I think that I
saw some reports
right.
about that
So
too.
Denmark is lobbying very hard.
And I saw, when Trump Jr. and Charlie Kirk went there, people were cheering, and I saw that scene. So so that must be real.
They really want to have development and have success and prosperity in Greenland. They don't want to be held down like they don't want to be poor people. They want to be wealthy and successful. Yes, economically vibrant. And they want to have their kids be able to, succeed and have a better life than they did. Like the dream for the Greenlanders. But there are these polls, and I don't think you should believe any of the polls, because the Danes are now doing a kind of a psyop on the Greenlanders and sending in information. They just banned a documentary about the cryolite mining in Greenland because the Danes got really rich on that, and the Greenlanders didn't really benefit so much. So the Danes do things to kind of try to control the public opinion. They even got the Greenlanders to pass a law. Only Danish can try to influence the elections in Greenland, but no other country.
Wow.
So they're really trying to create the narrative.
Kind of dictatorial.
Oh yeah.
In a sense.
So you should not believe any polls, pro or con. It'll be there'll be a referendum on independence after the election on March 11th.
Yeah. So even in the New York Times report, there has been they wrote that somehow secretly they like the fact that United States is becoming, somehow this rhetoric is affecting, Danish to back off their back, the Greenlanders. But
we'll see what happens.
Okay. You're also the vice chair of the Center for Energy and Environment.
That's right.
As AFPI. So fossil fuel, drill baby drill, that seems to be Trump's second term. He said, somebody asked him, what's your economic policy for your second term? He said, drill baby drill. Can you tell the importance of fossil fuel? Because a lot of our audience in South Korea and the Korean Americans in America, or across the world, the globalist agenda, the Green New Deal.
Yes.
And I think South Korea fell into this trap. So they are emphasizing this environmentalism. They're always 5 years, 10 years, a little bit slower than America. So all the stuff that Obama and Biden and all these left-wing people emphasize, that took over South Korea. Can you tell our audience the importance of fossil fuel and energy independence?
Yes. So I think that your audience might want to look up someone named Alex Epstein. He wrote a book called Fossil Futures. What he talks about is the goal of every government, of every country, should be human flourishing. And so there's a trade-off. There's a trade-off for any kind of energy. But the fact is, American air is cleaner today because of American natural gas. Because natural gas gives cleaner energy than really any other energy, except nuclear, which is super clean, sustainable. You've got 40 years of good, clean energy. So we love nuclear. We love oil and gas. We harvest it cleanly in the U.S. You have to have high standards. You want to leave the land in a better place than when you arrived.
That's the best energy out there, right? Fossil fuel and the most efficient.
It is the most efficient. It's the cheapest overall because when you start to look at things like wind turbines and solar cells, what you find is that it benefits the Chinese Communist Party, and that it actually
They're the one who exports all that, right?
Oh, yes.
And it kills a lot of eagles, I heard.
Well, it kills birds and it kills whales, depending if it's offshore wind or if it's the onshore wind. But I will also say this. It takes a lot of fossil fuels and rare earths to make that stuff and to keep it going.
Yeah.
Like the wind turbines are super dirty to make. It's tons of cement, for every one of them, tons of rare earths being mined. And then it takes the oils to keep it lubricated. So it's not clean or green at all.
Like same as like electric car, the batteries. I heard that you need fossil fuel to make those
Yes,
batteries.
it takes a lot of mining to make those batteries, and it's a lot of pollution. It's so much pollution that an electric car has to run for 15 years to be cleaner than a gas-powered car. So your combustion engine car, for the first 15 years of its life, is actually running cleaner than an electric car, just because of the filth, all of the mining and the disturbance and everything that goes into it.
It's not as clean as people think that it is.
No, it's
right?
not.
It
And
sounds
then you have
great.
to power
Wind,
it.
Solar.
Yeah, but mostly those cars are being powered from generators or from coal-fired plants.
Right.
It's not clean. Yeah.
People don't talk about that enough.
They don't. Yeah.
Right. Can you talk about LNG? I think South Korea is very much interested in LNG. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, we would love to sell Korea, our great trading partner. I mean, I think South Korea is our seventh largest trading partner in the world. And so we value that relationship. We want to have more trade with South Korea. And we would love to sell South Korea, our great ally, American LNG. And you can see now under Secretary Burgum, our Interior Secretary, and Secretary Chris Wright, our new Energy Secretary, we are turning on American LNG exports. So I hope that we can trade a lot with our LNG.
Right now, South Korea is going through some turmoil. I bet you know it. The president, the conservative president, is facing impeachment. The decision will probably be made by the Constitutional Court in March. Do you have any words to say, encouraging words to the conservatives in Korea? They're kind of devastated right now.
Yes. Well, before I turn to that, I just want to say that the net zero agenda that perhaps South Korea has kind of signed on to is an anti-human agenda. It's a deindustrialization.
The left-wing party is pushing this.
Yes, it's a deindustrialization. And to have human flourishing, we want to industrialize. Strong countries have to have cheap, abundant energy, and they need a strong economy to be a strong country, and to be able to afford to defend yourselves. So it's important to have cheap and abundant energy, and so that's a very important thing, not to be anti-human and not to degrade the human situation. We don't want to live colder, hungrier, more miserable lives. We want our children to live better than we did, and it's possible. But regarding the conservatives in South Korea, my heart goes out to what's happening there. There's a lot of pressure from the left. We experienced it here in the U.S. Remember, in 2020, what happened in that election was unbelievable.
It was devastating past 4 years.
Yes, devastating for us and for the world because of the weak leadership. And there was a Time magazine article from February 2021 that was terrific about the election. They called it "Securing the Election."
I saw that was crazy art. Yeah,
crazy,
article.
but true.
But true.
It was the sort of the playbook of how they did it, and so we suffered as a country, and so there's hope. Never give up hope. You have to organize very, very well. Have a strong connection with all the other conservative groups. Don't bicker about small differences. If you agree more than 51% with a group, they're your ally. And so you must work together to defeat the left and to destroy the Chinese Communist Party's influence in your country.
You're right. And you had a very unique career. Can you talk a little bit about your actress era to our audience a little bit?
Sure. So when I was in my early 20s, I was studying to be a doctor, and to make extra money, I started to do modeling and acting.
Okay.
And so I did some soap operas, some movies, and some used to be called primetime guest stars and commercials, and had a lot of fun. But then I began to practice before I was running other nonprofit and for-profit businesses.
So being an actress was never your dream. You did that to fulfill your doctorate, to become a doctor, right?
Yeah, my dad was paying my way, but I wanted extra spending money.
Got it.
So I was like, I'd like to be able to shop a little more than, than my father's credit card. And so that's why I started working outside of the school.
Do you expect yourself to be called back to the Trump administration second
that's
term?
up to
Because we were one of the
President
few loyalists there.
Yeah.
I really worried a lot for his second term because he had a lot of betrayers around him with Rex Tillerson, Jim Mattis, all the close cabinet members. Do you have more faith right now with Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel being confirmed as FBI director? What's your expectation of Trump 2.0?
What you see from the outside is what you're getting. We are united, I think. The team they're all friends. They all know each other. They're working hard on behalf of the American people. And isn't that what every government should do in every country, is work to make the lives of their citizens better every day? That's what they're laser focused on.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much for accepting this interview.
Yeah, pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.